Not getting your health and wellness questions answered at your doctor's office? Are you ready to take control of your health and well-being? Do you want the proper tools to set you on your wellness journey? Do you want to meet and chat with expert members of the healthcare team? Well, step into real time with Dr. Stacy. Hi, I'm Dr. Stacy de Gale, your personal physiotherapist and wellness consultant who wants to make sure that you live your best life. We'll be chatting with wellness team members and inviting you as you are the center of that team. And we'll be doing all of this while you are in the comfort of your own home or office. Join me in real time with Dr. Stacy as we discuss everything health and everything wellness. Hi everybody, good afternoon and welcome to Real Time with Dr. Stacy. It has been a while and I'm so happy that you've been able to join me this afternoon to get back in a gear, as it were, with our health. And I've always promised you fantastic guests, and this evening is one such evening where we are going to be in the presence of, I would like to say, sleep royalty. So anything you need to know about good sleep and the connections between sleep and good health, you need to be here. So if you have somebody you want to invite, share this live now. You're on Back in Motion Physical Therapy page, you're on my Facebook page, we are on YouTube as well. Get to sharing because this information is vital. We often forget the so-called small things that are the most important, and sleep is one of them. For all of you who from deep south, you all know how difficult it is for us to get just good sleep, especially when we have to traverse to Port of Spain. Thank God for the highway. We're happy for the highway, cut down some time. But we know about lack of sleep. Women, we know about lack of sleep because of getting younger with menopause, with menstrual cycle changes. We know about seeing about children, about seeing about the husband or the significant other. Men, many of you are working all sorts of shifts, working offshore. Get your answers now because poor sleep has been directly linked to so many health conditions that we're going to learn more about this afternoon. I am so pleased and so excited to introduce to you Mr. Gregory Arneaud. Now, let me tell you, Mr. Arneaud, thank God for computers, thank God for technology. He's currently in Barbados, eh? He's supposed to be on the beach somewhere relaxing or getting ready to sleep. Getting ready to sleep. But he has taken the time to be here with us. And I want to tell you more about him. Remember, we don't just have any and anybody on this program. We have experts from Trinidad and the region who are able to attest to their field in the international realm. And Mr. Arneaud is one such person. He is the clinical director of ISD Health Solutions, as well as Caribbean Sleep Disorders Association. He is an American board-certified respiratory therapist. He is author of the Wake Up Call. So if you want more information about sleep, just go to Amazon while you're online and order your book. One time, author of the Wake Up Call. Even though he doesn't look it, he has 25 years of experience in this field. And I'm happy to say he is the voice of sleep health in Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the Caribbean. So help me to welcome Mr. Gregory Arneaud. Mr. Arneaud, welcome to Real Time with Dr. Stacy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stacy. That introduction, I have to say, I feel like I should be holding up a medal or something. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the kind sentiments and words.
No, and we say nothing that is untrue because you are delving in an area where typically we don't have people speaking about publicly, and it has so many linkages with our health. So we want to break down some of these barriers and answer some of these questions today. And so all our viewers, remember, if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to post them and we'll address them once we have the time. So, Mr. Arneaud, just before we get into some of the meat, just tell the people a little more of yourself and how and why you entered this realm of sleep health.
Well, I was fortunate enough to have the best of both worlds. My parents are from Trinidad and Tobago, but yet I grew up in the United States. So I was able to understand, obviously, the culture there and exposure to various types of information that unfortunately was not prevalent in the Caribbean space, and that was the understanding of how sleep apnea is diagnosed and treated. My both mother and father, mother from Belmont, my father from Maracas, St. Joseph. Um, as I grew up in a Trinidadian home, my grandparents used to sometimes come and spend time with us in our home in Miami. And my grandmother, on my mother's side, had one of the loudest snoring conditions I've ever heard in my life. And yet it was the chuckle of every joke, and my brother and I would be giggling each time that she was there, not understanding what and how that was actually happening at first, but at the same time, as later as I became a respiratory therapist, I learned about a condition called sleep disordered breathing, also is known as sleep apnea, and was able to easily determine, based on the complexity of how my grandmother lived with all of the challenges in regards to her weight, to her blood pressure, developing dementia and glaucoma, that there was a direct connection to untreated sleep apnea and those outcomes. So I felt it was my duty and my passion to try to make a difference in the space of where my heritage is from in Trinidad. And I started this journey a little over maybe 13 years now, and time boy is flying, with trying to help broaden the understanding of the importance of sleep. And at the same time, as you have mentioned in your introduction, just traveling from the deep south to get to Port of Spain, that's a sleep disorder, if you want to tell me, because you can't get
Oh,
any
yeah.
sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Because the traffic obviously tends to cause you to have to be up and have more wakeful time,
Yes.
as well as not having the ability to get good rest.
Rest.
So I decided to try to make a difference in the space, providing ways and solutions to sleep apnea, and also now insomnia, and just directing people to the persons that could best help address some of those concerns and needs with working with local physicians throughout the region.
So you've mentioned that initial interest began with your granny, and you speak about sleep apnea. Can you talk to us about sleep apnea and in your experience in the Trinidadian context as to its prevalence and how can it be detected and what are the negatives in relation to sleep apnea as a disorder?
I'll try to remember all of that, but I'll start with sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is a very common issue wherein while you are asleep, whereas this is a non-recall state of mind, so you would not really have any understanding of what you could be doing in your sleep. Most often, your bedside partner would have more information in that area, but there could be challenges with your breathing that are taking place, most often associated to that harmonic sound of the rattling of your palate. That sounds like right. That some bedside partners are unfortunately going to deal with tonight, as so that they have been challenged with this as part of some of the strain they're putting on their relationships, not understanding once again that sleep affects not just your everyday and every health concern that we talk about, but it affects your social life, the intimacy, and your ability to have a good sex life. So I felt it was something that needed to be done in this space. So we provided a seamless approach of how to be able to access some information and care in this particular area by going on our website to schedule a free sleep consultation. So anybody in Trinidad or Tobago, as well as in the Caribbean, that may find themselves having a snoring partner, or maybe feeling some dryness in their mouth as they're waking each day, or maybe starting to have some headaches, or maybe starting to see some changes in their blood pressure and or their ability to manage their sugar levels, and thinking that it's all predicated to what they're eating and certain other aspects of what they're doing in their lifestyle, and not understanding that the root cause traditionally is because of what's going on in your sleep.
Wow.
And we're finding this out. And why I say traditionally is that because no one ever thought about this to be a part of how you manage chronic
Yes.
illness. The first indication of how you manage pretty much any complaint is to provide medication. No, nobody looks at a holistic way. So
Absolutely.
traditionally, we looked at sleep as something that we had to do, not something we wanted to do.
Want to do.
And we typically would prioritize more productivity in any particular area in our lives, or even for the
Correct.
sake of entertainment and pleasure, than
Yes.
sacrificing good sleep in doing so, and not understanding the long term effects in this area. So providing these solutions remotely through an online consultation, and then providing for them an ability to do a test in the convenience of your own home, is the first step in understanding more about your sleep architecture, which involves your light sleep, deep
Mm.
sleep, and REM sleep stages, and primarily educate clients on what those particular stages mean and what's actually happening in sleep, more so than the dreams that you hopefully can remember if you're having to still dream, because some people don't even dream anymore because their sleep is so fragmented throughout the
Wow.
night due to these breathing concerns.
That's an interesting point I never thought of with regards to dreaming. People, we're not talking about dreaming for lots of numbers, eh? But so are you trying to tell us, Mr. Arno, that a natural part of good sleep health is to have some amount of ability to dream and to be able to recall these dreams?
Well, I will say it this way. As you're going through your sleep architecture of light, where you're kind of now kind of dozing off, you're kind of losing a little bit of consciousness, but if something does change in the room or the atmosphere, you'll jump up real quickly. You're
Yes.
kind of not there yet. And you kind of move into more of a deep sleep. This
Right.
is primarily the area where you would find it if you have a friend or family member you're trying to wake up and you can't seem to get them up.
Yes.
This is this deep
Yeah.
transparent, this sleep that you're in this stage, and then you move into what I call the scary stage, where you may be looking at your bedside partner and noticing that their eyes are twitching from left to right and side to side, and
Yes.
thinking they're possessed and want to go for the holy water. But they're okay. They're in what we call REM sleep, rapid eye movement. And this is the time that we begin having these vivid dreams that seem
Mm.
so real. And obviously, it's like Vegas. What happens in your dream stays in your dream unless you want to share it with someone. But at the same time, if you don't wake up directly from that stage of REM, you would probably not remember some of the
Right.
dreams, because the stages are not light sleep, deep sleep, and you stay in REM sleep for the whole
Right.
night. But this is a cycle of maybe 4 to 6 times throughout the
Mm.
night, maybe over the course of 7 or 9 hours of time, that this takes place, where different hormones are being released that
Yes.
regulate your desire to eat. Obviously, your ability to manage your sugar levels, and addressing the insulin resistance that happens as a result of getting short sleep and or maybe disturbed sleep.
The same.
How weight gain, it's not only because of KFC and all the various lifestyle changes we need to all
Yes.
make. And obviously, in the culture that we live in, everything we touch,
Yes.
from roti to doubles to palori to
Yes.
hammering ball to solo half sugar. And it's a constant war when we're not able to break down those sugars because of poor sleep
Yes.
quality. We're taking a look at obesity and hypertension and diabetes, and then we kind of roll over to some of the more serious conditions of heart attacks and strokes, which most people don't ever see coming. You don't
Correct.
have a heart attack on a calendar, so to say. So typically when it happens, it's going to happen in the wee hours of the early part of the morning. And it's because of what's going on during your sleep, which we've learned that have such a high prevalence to the risk of stroke and particular heart attacks, because of the blockage to the brain is what we call a stroke, which typically happens over time as the carotid artery starts building up plaque, and that
Black. Yes.
vibrational energy that we hear of
Yes.
causing, once again, that vibrational energy maybe break that plaque off, concluding that oxygen to the brain, is where
Wow.
we can simply see how a stroke is kind of developed over time, and the
Mm.
same in how heart attacks. And then probably the worst thing that we think about more than heart attack, strokes, and diabetes is how it impacts our sex life. If you're having issues with, obviously, in this area as a man, it affects your ego. It affects, obviously, your ability to satisfy your spouse and or
Yes.
partner. And that it's something that we have lent to more medication, or maybe looking for other substitutes to how to address this root cause, because
Yes.
during this REM sleep cycle is the time when men have the highest development of their testosterone buildup. And this is where they have a penile erection. It's not because of an erotic thought or dream, but the function of how the body has to function to be able to allow us
Mhm.
to be able to enjoy that
Right.
intimacy and obviously in performance. It's the same thing for women, how it affects their production of libido. And so their desire for intimacy and obviously, their hormones are always at say at some challenge at some point, whether it's
Yes.
becoming into what puberty and moving into adulthood and then moving into the latter stages of maybe
Yes.
pregnancy that some women obviously will have, and then menopause. This is a vicious cycle. When you think about sleep plays an important role in all those
In
hormones,
every
and
part. Yes.
your inability to control or manage your bedtime hours of when you can sleep or when you can wake up because of a nagging child. And who's the first person to come and wake them up? It's mommy,
Mommy.
right? It's going to be mommy that's probably going to handle the majority of the issues with their children's health as well as their husbands and their family. So there's a lot of responsibility, once again, placed on a women as they're managing their days and months with challenges, with hormones being all over the place for different reasons, emotionally, and obviously different foods, and then compile it with sleep, right? With the issues
Yes.
of trying to fall asleep, and worst off, with a partner they may be sleeping next to that's keeping them up at night with the
I know.
snoring and grinding and waking up.
Yes.
So, these are areas that we would hope that at some point become so accessible and so knowledgeable to the public that this is a concern and it can be addressed. It's not something
Yes.
you have to live in the dark with any longer, because there's so much information and research to support obviously the benefits of addressing these areas for
Yes.
long-term optimal health.
You keep mentioning, the relationship to, for example, diabetes, hypertension, and I want to speak about that in a little more detail. For our viewers, I'm one of the great advocates for diabetes management in Trinidad and Tobago, and one of the areas that is lacking is that part of sleep, the role that sleep plays in glucose control and insulin resistance and so. And I've noticed, I haven't done a study, but I've noticed, and I'm sure many clinicians have noticed, since COVID-19, where so many people were relegated to working from home, we found that many persons uh, actually worked longer hours. And a lot of bosses took it for granted. Well, you're home, so you could work
Mhm.
longer. People were actually getting less sleep working from home, had greater challenges in creating balance. And we found that younger and younger patients were not only becoming osteoporotic because they were not
Mhm.
going out into the sunlight,
Right.
but they were becoming hypertensive and being diagnosed with diabetes where their diet has not even changed. And many of
Mhm.
them are slender, they're not voluptuous like myself, they're slender, typically active, and yet they're now diagnosed with diabetes, all because of this being at home and working for longer hours with less sleep. So somebody
Mhm.
has just messaged me on my line
Mhm.
asking the question, how? What is that link? Why is there that connection? Can you tell us a little more on that?
Well, first off, while we are asleep, as we talked about, there's a number of different amazing things that are happening as God created it to be. There's a process of why we sleep, all right? It's to help us to realize why we're human and why God is God, because if He went to sleep, we'd all be in trouble. But while we are asleep, what happens is that typically because we are non-active, we are laying down, we're calm, we're in what we call a parasympathetic state. This is the time the body starts rejuvenating and repairing and restoring the brain, memories, detoxing, obviously, information that we don't need. We have a drop in our blood pressure, which is used to help regulate our blood pressure. And typically, if you are having apneic events, meaning times where your breathing has stopped for longer than 10 seconds or more, the body is going to go into a state of crises, or what we call fight or flight response. This causes an increase in heart rhythm, as the heart's main function is to pump blood. Blood being that vehicle that oxygen is attached to, that's carried throughout our circulatory system. This causes challenges now with the heart being overworked. You're not getting sufficient oxygen in because of either an obstruction in the airway space or possibly a neurological condition that the brain has not signaled the diaphragm to engage breathing. and causes an increase in blood pressure. So you see that's the complete opposite of what should be happening in sleep. And this increase in blood pressure tends to happen throughout the night as you are unaware, once again, because you are in sleep. Most often, if persons are checking their blood pressure that have high blood pressure, would notice that it's most identified as being higher in the mornings if you have
Yes.
uncontrolled sleep apnea than rather it would be throughout the day. And that's because of the 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of time that once again you had been going back and forth through this process. At the same time, Doc, as your oxygen levels drop, there's a term for this, it's called hypoxia. The drop in oxygen level greater than 3%. It's called an apneic event if you last for longer than 10 seconds. But if it drops lower than 3% or more, it's called a hypopnea. And depending on how many times that happens as you're sleeping, cause the body to become insulin resistant because there's a lack of oxygen. And this now causes you to have challenges, as you mentioned, to manage glucose.
Yes.
So when we're finding that there are 50% of type 2 diabetics have underlying sleep apnea or other
Wow.
sleep disturbances, and 70% of obese diabetics, we're trying to determine, is it the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken?
Mm,
Because there's such a correlation with persons who have sleep disturbances that have
yes.
diabetes and vice versa. So those are more or less the two areas that most people are unaware of, the connection of how sleep impacts those particular comorbidities, to include, as we spoke about, obesity and the cardiovascular
Yes.
risk. And then more importantly, the safety of ourselves and others if we're not alert and are able to handle the responsibilities of our jobs or driving or handling machinery, which eventually could be to increase risks of accidents
Yes.
and loss of life. Because at the end of the day, if your body is not getting sufficient sleep, unfortunately, you can't replace it with a Starbucks coffee. There's no,
Correct.
there's only
Correct.
so much stimulation the body could withstand, but sleep is the, I would say, still the winner. In all cases, it will take you down at some point, whether
It
you can
will.
think you can manage without it or not. So these are the areas that persons that are kind of challenged with health concerns don't ever link to their sleep habits. And the questions that we've asked is, one, are you tired? Are you having blood pressure issues now? Do you have diabetes? Are you overweight? Is your neck circumference greater than 15 inches as a woman? And women wouldn't know their neck circumference. They know their chest and their waist and their hips, but their neck size, they'll never know because there's no need to know. But men would
Yes.
tend to have a little more information in that area because we wear collared shirts that we have to know exactly what the size is to fit
Yes.
our necks, right? So if you have a neck circumference of greater than 16 and a half inches in men and or 15 in women, because of the increased mass around the neck circumference will cause more of a probability of the muscles relaxing during sleep and collapsing the
Collapsing.
airway, causing once again those beautiful sounds of snoring and or choking or gasping or even grinding of the teeth as you're clenching, trying to open
Wow.
up that airway space, which is another sleeping disorder called bruxism.
Yes. And quite often I have many patients with TMJ issues, and we go directly to the grinding of the teeth. But I haven't had a doctor or dentist mention that correlation with breathing. And some of these patients, they use the dental guards, and we do all the TMJ work, and with very little results. And possibly this is the other area we need to really pay closer attention to. So thank you for bringing that one up, because it's so common here in Trinidad and Tobago. Um, you spoke about a little earlier on about you know, that those different levels of sleep, those different phases that we go through 4 to 6 times within 7 to 9 hours. Now, I could use myself as an example. For the last 15 to 20 years, I don't think I've gotten more than 4.5 hours to
Ooh,
5 hours sleep a night.
wow.
Every couple of weeks on a Friday evening, my body will call back for it, and I will sleep from 8 p.m. straight until 6 a.m. the next day and feel exhausted when I get up. And there are many of us walking the streets like this. What is an adequate amount of sleep for
Well,
an
adequate
adult?
amount.
And is it different for children?
Yes, it is. So the Sleep Health Foundation has indicated that what adults should be receiving based on what these processes obviously mean to our ability to manage our health and our responsibilities each day is 7 to 9 hours for adults. Children tend to need a little bit more sleep, especially as newborns. And gratefully they do, so that we can get some sleep and continue with our days while they're sleeping. But at the same time, sleep tends to become a little less as we get older, because it becomes some challenges in some cases. They have more short sleep cycles, more cat naps are in the retired citizen type of a age group that you find from time to time. But overall, while we all are unique, our sleep quality is more important than the sleep quantity. And what you spoke of, which is something that I really have a heart for, is helping physicians, nurses, firefighters, doctors that are in the space of managing FAA, pilots and truck drivers and the police, which are first responders. This is a very, very sensitive topic because you are human as well. And you have very much a huge role as a physician. And we know we have physician burnout all the time, especially through COVID. We saw how many physicians obviously had to step up to the plate at that time. But the unfortunate thing is that because of your busy lifestyle and because of obviously all the responsibilities, you typically don't get much rest. And when you don't get enough rest each night, you start accumulating what we call sleep debt. That right, like we need one more debt, right? So
Yeah.
what happens is that so what happens is that when you lose those precious hours each day, whether it be due to the time that you've allotted yourself to sleep or the quality of the sleep, you start accumulating this sleep debt, which is hours amongst hours and hundreds and thousands of hours over time that you didn't get the rest. And unfortunately, the sad consequence is that you will eventually see how that's impacted you in some ways with dementia, with being in one of
Oh,
those areas and mental issues, because your brain's got to get the rest. It's got to go through those cycles. It's like a rebooting process. So you can skim by as long as you can as a young adult. And obviously, we all hit the iron when it's hot, when we have to work and take care of what we have to do while we have that opportunity to do so. And then even as a student, as we are trying to accomplish goals and cramming for tests and all these things, these are the challenges that we're all facing, not to include obviously the commute from back and forth from Trinidad, that take away our ability to get good sleep. And then we would sleep rebound when you oversleep, so to say.
yeah.
Sleeping 8 to 10 to 12 hours is a solution in managing, obviously, you preparing you for the next couple of days ahead, because without that, that would obviously make it even more detrimental to how
Yes.
you would be able to function. But what we have to realize, even if you slept 10 to 12 hours and you were tired throughout the week, the quality of the sleep for those 10 or 12 hours could not give you the restoration that you're looking for in some cases, and maybe also a kind of a red flag or some kind of
Yeah.
indicator that maybe you should get a sleep study test.
Correct.
The other side of this is that unfortunately, when we spend that time asleep, you can't make up for the sleep that you lost, right?
Yes.
But it will help, obviously, when you're adjusting, and that you would probably have some challenges if you are sleeping at different times and waking up at different times, because your body's biological clock and circadian rhythm kind of works with you waking up at the same time and going to sleep at the same time. And if that changes, that's throwing off your cortisol levels, your
Yes.
melatonin release, and obviously what you're eating could spike, obviously, your ability and arousing you to not be able to sleep because of caffeine in the system. So there's so many things we have to take into consideration when you really start looking at how you are going to manage your sleep, when you finally realize after this conversation today that,
Yeah.
wow, sleep is not for suckers, which they told me
No.
in one podcast. And I said, no, without getting sleep, you're going to be really wishing that you did, because it's a sad outcome down the road. Like when I see patients that I've taken care of being a respiratory therapist that have to be trached or maybe walk around with an
Mm.
oxygen device,
Right.
and they tell me, I don't know why I can't breathe. I stopped smoking 20 years ago. And I said, well, how long did you smoke? Well, I smoked for
Hmm.
about 5 to 6 years off and on. And I said, well, how many packs a day did you smoke? Oh, I smoked 2 packs a day. So what we didn't realize is that even though you had stopped over 20 years ago, the
Yes,
damage that was done is now showing itself up in
that's
your
right.
later age. And the same way with sleep, well, you might find some of those challenges in the areas that we spoke of cardiovascular issues, weight problems, dementia,
Dementia.
glaucoma, and like I said,
Wow.
increased mortality risk because once again, we were just running nonstop. You know, they say you sleep when you're dead, right? In the Caribbean, that's the saying.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's the thing.
so obviously you'll be sleeping a lot sooner than you want
People are like,
to.
that's just amazing. The relationship to just even your mental health, to your mood. And as a physical therapist, I've found that patients who suffer with chronic pain, it's even more difficult to manage their pain when they're not getting adequate sleep. Granted, it is almost a catch 22 sometimes because of their pain. They have difficulty in sleeping. And then sometimes they can't sleep, that causes the pain to worsen. So, is what little tips and tricks would you give for everybody who's listening? We have a lot of people listening, people saying hi. Somebody has said, listen, I have my copy of the wake up call, and it
All
is a
right.
great read.
All right.
So
I'm
we
so
have
happy to hear
people,
that.
yeah, we have people here. So what can you start to practical
Oh,
tips
Jared.
for us to start making these changes that would allow us to not only get more sleep, but to get an improved quality of sleep?
Well, the first I think I would probably tell everyone that's looking to get a better night's sleep is to set a sleep alarm. We've
Yes.
lived our whole life setting an alarm to wake up, and nobody ever thought about setting an alarm to tell you when it's time to go to bed. Okay,
So
time to
true.
one, put the phones down. This is something that we didn't have challenges with 20 years plus ago. We'd go to bed and there was only one phone in the house, so whoever had it pretty much was going to be on it unless they had
So
the,
true.
so don't let your parents have to tell you to get off the phone because they got to use it. How embarrassing that used to be. But now this generation would never know. But and TV actually didn't even run past 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock. It would be more of a sign off, right?
It's
So
a side
with
of
the
correct.
access to so much stimulation through the phones, through access to the light that affects our ability to be able to sleep because of our cortisone levels being affected by this, and at the same time, our brain in 1,000 different directions at one time as we scroll through social media with so many thoughts coming in our mind as we go from page to page. Um, that would be the first step in getting a sleep time to go to bed. Wind down, make sure that you've kind of left everything for tomorrow, so to say.
Yes.
Write down whatever you need to write down for the next day. Kind of bring yourself into a calm state of mind.
Yes.
Maybe get you some Milo as a Ovaltine, or maybe some tea, or whatever it is that you take to get to bed, and listen to some nice music. Maybe do some light stretching, and meditation is also great to kind of bring you to that place of sleep, right? Your bedroom should be a place of sleep and one other S word, and that's the only thing that should be happening in there. So
That's right.
it shouldn't be eating. You shouldn't. If you have a fridge in your bedroom, okay, that's the problem. That's
Yeah.
not a bedroom. That's just a place you lay down. Your bedroom should be more of a sanctuary for sleep and
Yes.
for sex, obviously, and that we necessarily don't take our work into our bedroom,
Yes.
take our food into our bedroom, have a television in their bedroom. And I will
Yes.
be one to be a victim of this. I like to have the TV on sometimes and the
Yes.
sleep timer just shut off. And as you can see, with a few bags underneath my eyes over the last few months, I have not been able to get good sleep because of the pain that you spoke about that I've had in my shoulder over the
Wow.
last few months. And there's no optimal position apparently when you're sleeping and you have a
Correct.
sudden change in movement in the bed and it jolts
Yes.
you up and you're like, oh my gosh. So there
Yes.
is a direct relationship to obviously fibromyalgia and some of your patients that are seeing
Yes.
so much pain and an inability to get a good night's sleep. It kind of goes hand in hand. So that's something unfortunately that sometimes requires medication, but you would never recommend medication to sleep
Correct.
without having a sleep study first, because you can
Yes.
cause exacerbation to sleep apnea, which is prolonging those events so that you're not breathing by detox, obviously disconnecting the brain rather from the body by
From the body.
using a hypnotic like Ambien or Lunesta or some type of
Hmm.
medication to do so, which could eventually lead to your demise because you're now causing yourself even more stress, and you're thinking
Yes.
you're getting a good night's sleep, and you're not really actually getting one step closer to the grave. So these are areas that we would hope to address: making the room cool, keeping the light as much out of the room as possible. Dark curtains, put some shades up if you need. So I just
Yes.
installed some in my bedroom because I want it to be dark, even in the morning if I got to catch
Yes.
an extra few hours right before the day starts.
Oh,
And also I would probably recommend more than anything is take a journal. Like
mm,
you really can't keep track of what's going on from day to day, but
yes.
kind of write down. See if you see a trend. If you're waking up every morning at a certain time and you didn't want to wake up,
Yes.
try to figure out what's happening so we can
Yeah.
help
What's that
you find
trigger?
a solution to it. What could be the trigger?
Yeah.
And what you should be doing in regards to what type of medication you can be taking. Because sometimes you may need more of a slow release medication
Mm,
if you're having difficulties staying asleep rather than persons who need something interacting immediately to fall asleep.
fall asleep.
We have so many people abusing melatonin around the world today because
Yes.
someone figured out that melatonin helps you sleep and didn't know it was in your body. So, yes, your body produces melatonin. And as you say, having exposure to sunlight to help regulate these melatonin and cortisol levels are very important for us to
Yes.
help put our sleep health in a better position. I would say the last thing that I can think of outside of dealing with the phones and the light and getting your mind there is make sure your bedside partner understands how sleep is important and
Yes.
respects it. Meaning that if you need to sleep, they need to take themselves out the room if they want to
Mm,
talk, if they want to watch TV, if they want to do
yes.
anything else that is not involved with sleeping. Because I didn't realize what I was doing to my mom as she worked nights as a night nurse in ICU for 30 years, and realizing that every time she would quarrel at my brother and I for making noise in the day, that was her time
No
of
time to
sleep.
sleep.
And we're like, girl, sleep some other time in our minds, right? We can say that to mom. But at the end of the day, as I learned later on how important those hours of sleep, of
Yes.
uninterrupted sleep, because that one phone call or text message or dream or even a waking up to go to the restroom, which is after time and time again, you realize this pattern is another condition called nocturia, which is a symptom of sleep apnea. These are all things that could be better managed as you start becoming a little more intimate with understanding how you're
Mm,
sleeping
sleeping.
and some of those things. So those would be the tips I would tell folks to start to consider. See a sleep specialist if you can. We have
Yes.
access to those through telehealth as well as getting a free consultation through our organization here at ISD and start the journey of understanding more
Yes.
about your sleep. We know there are a number of global manufacturers around the world taking a look at sleep apnea detection as part of an option added to smartwatches, to the
Mm,
iWatch, the Fitbit, the new rings,
yes.
the Aura rings. Well, unfortunately, that will never help you to sleep better. It will just monitor signals and certain
Yes.
information, and at the same time, is not medical grade devices to
Correct.
address some of these sleeping disorders and should not be used as such. So it does give you good information and data, and you can
Yes.
potentially see trends that could help you to be more aware that there could be a need to see
I
a
need
sleep
to stay
specialist.
sleep.
But don't rely on your watch to figure out whether or not you're
Correct.
sleeping good or not. Get a sleep study test and
Study
start
done.
the understanding of how your sleep is impacting your life from day to day.
We have two questions that I want to, because guys, I'm trying to hold them here for as long as possible. We're supposed to be just about 30 minutes. We've gone over. So if you have any questions, you have 10 seconds to get them on the screen. But one of the questions from one of our viewers, Fiola, is what about the use of magnesium as a sleep aid? And I have many patients who are coming now saying that they're using magnesium and even zinc as sleep aids. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I will have to tell you, to be honest with you, that is not an area that I have a lot of information on, and I would not want to just share information
Yes.
without concrete knowledge in the space. But I would say that I know a few physicians that have a lot more knowledge in this area.
Yes.
Dr. Tanya Brabron, who was part of our World Sleep Day event, there is a
Right.
segment that she spoke about that. If you were to go online to our Facebook page, or Instagram, you would see the segment that took place on World Sleep Day, and Dr. Tanya Brabron out of St. Lucia highlighted obviously how
Right.
magnesium is used and how zinc and these things could help to improve
Could
sleep.
help.
And we're seeing once again, if anybody names any other vitamin in the world that could help us sleep, it'll be selling millions of it tomorrow because we're all sleep deprived, right? So
Correct.
please don't get caught up with the next
Yeah.
thing. Oh, it's more vitamin
Next best
C. And
thing.
next thing you know, we're
Correct.
buying vitamin C by the packets. But understand
Correct.
that sleep is only going to be determined by actually having a sleep study and this
Yes.
has to be done in the comforts of your home if you want to get more natural data to determine what's happening to you and
Right.
more nights of information, because it's
Information.
hard enough to get someone to sleep in a medical center one night versus multiple nights to take a
Much.
look at your sleep, right? And it's
Right.
costly too at the same time and inconvenient. So I guess those will be the first steps, Dr. DeGale, I think persons should take advantage of in learning about how you can get information about sleep. We have a sleep health education portion of our page that
Yes.
talks about women's sleep, children in sleep, how sleep affects corporations and productivity and
Yes.
risk. Talking about sexual dysfunction, the diabetes, the hypertension,
Yes.
weight gain. Like I said, just pretty much everything that we can talk about kind of leads back to how you sleep is how you live, right? And that's why I felt compelled to write this book
Yes.
as the wake up call for the Caribbean as well as the world to understand that there's so much that we don't know about sleep. And
Correct.
if you would take the time to invest in understanding that this is going to be a part of your life, whether you understand it or not, and it makes up a third of your life in some cases, that it should be something that you should start prioritizing and learning a
Prioritizing.
little more, because it would be very sad to be as my grandmother did, to be in this situation where she could not find a resolve to any of the
Yeah.
issues that she had, just constantly being on the medication, and once again feeling like she'd been hit by a Mack truck, so to say, which is the feeling when you're not getting good rest,
Good
and
rest.
eventually pass away, not knowing that this is something that could have been managed, that could
Yes.
have been controlled, and her outcomes and how she lived her life could have been truly changed
Change.
as a result of it. So this is why I have such a passion for this, because I know the value of a good night's sleep. And I know
Yes.
that if someone is suffering or having issues with this, this is part of my purpose, I guess, at this point, to at least lead you to the water. I can't make you
Yes.
drink.
Can't make
I'm
us
not calling
drink, but
anybody a horse, but I'm saying that it's an opportunity for you to gather the information. Google it. Don't trust
yes.
me. Don't trust Dr. DeGale. Do your own research. Understand what's going on in sleep, and
On.
then take the step and take access of what's available now with what we're
Yes.
providing as a free consultation.
So just two more quick questions. Is it true that women need more sleep than men? Are we being a little biased?
I would think you do, based on what you got to deal with every day, and obviously how important your looks are to you, and how you feel, and how many selfies you're going to take the next day. So you want to look your best, right? So getting more sleep would probably be better for women than men. Yes, I would think.
And final question from the viewing audience. Can hormonal changes, particularly in women, impact the ability to sleep well?
Oh
Thanks,
man,
Viva, and thanks, Navita.
I tell you one thing. If there's one thing I would not want to have to deal with, is menopause, the bad M word. From what I
God,
hear from a number of women that are in that space of their life and the challenges they have with hormones, when you realize, as we spoke earlier, that hormones that are managed and controlled do a lot of that during the process of sleep.
yes,
If you are not getting good sleep, not getting enough sleep, already dealing with hormonal challenge, it will probably affect your ability to sleep.
yes,
It's kind of a sad place to be, but there is help. It's not it's not as dooming as it sounds, but at the same time, there are more needs for women to get information in this area, because
yes,
just missing on one night of sleep is bad enough to think about years and years ahead of you, that this is what you're going to be
right,
dealing with, and obviously don't feel that you have a solution to it, and can sometimes get depressed as a
oh yes.
result of it as well.
So, Mr. Arnold, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. I cannot thank you enough for not just sharing this much needed information, but definitely doing it in such a way where your passion is literally seeping through your pores. And I think that I speak on behalf of everyone here that you have opened up our eyes and our ears, and it is now our time to learn more and to take those steps to see to our health in a more proactive and rather than a reactive way. And starting with sleep, because the connections you have made with regards to sleep and diabetes, hypertension, strokes, dementia, glaucoma, pain management. It is real. It is not something that is perceived. The evidence is there. We ourselves can look at ourselves as research characters and
Mhm.
see for ourselves what lack of sleep does to our mood, what lack of sleep does to our ability to even digest food
Mhm.
comfortably. There's so many connections, and we could stay here for the entire night. And I'm
Hopefully
sure
not.
I'm gonna not this night, not this night. And I'm sure that I'm gonna get requests to have you again at some point. But thank you so very much. Please don't go anywhere. Just hold on. I'm just gonna take you off just for a minute. But thank
Okay.
you so very much. And guys, with Mr. Arneaud here, I promise over the next couple of hours that I will post all the information on my pages regarding ISD Health Solutions so that you can take that step to have your free
We
sleep consultation and, as needed, make other steps to have your formal consultations done so that you can manage any sleep disorder that you have not yet realized that you possess, so that we can manage all your other underlying conditions. And at the end of the day, just have a great night's
yeah.
rest or
Right.
great day's rest. So thank you so much, Mr. Arno. Hold on just for a moment. Guys, this was fantastic. Thank you all so much for those who asked questions, who made comments. Don't forget, please get your copy of Mr. Arnold's book, The Wake Up Call. It's on Amazon. Thank you, Mr. Lianos, for endorsing it and for reminding us that it's a great book, it's a great read, and it's practical in nature. And we are people who always believe, in holistic care as Caribbean people. So I encourage you to share this interview with your friends, with your family, and to get them more involved in their health, and starting with getting good sleep, good rest, because there's a direct connection between good sleep and good health. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line and I will try to answer and get the answers for you. And if you have any area you want me to get a specialist, a special guest to come and chat about, drop me a line as well. Thank you all so much for being with me on Real Time with Dr. Stacy. Until we meet again very soon. Stay well. Have a good night's rest, guys.